Is disaster brewing for Meghan Markle's brand as ever, as she sort of pseudo announces that there won't be any new products until 2026? Yes, that is 6 months away now, and she has nothing in the pipeline for as ever. This reveals huge, massive, glaring problems behind the scenes because if the launch is successful, if the brand is successful, you do not wait 6 months for more products. And so Meghan Markle admitting this as her podcast Confessions of a Female Founder, which totally and completely flopped, comes to a close for this season one. She's attempting to tell us there will be a season two. I think we can just glean overall from this is that everything Meghan Markle has touched this year has sort of flopped. It's been a massive failure. And what's more fascinating and revealing is that Netflix might be the one at the wheel now. Netflix may have given Meghan the rights to sort of guide things through the initial launch, but given how apparently somehow disastrous this has been, I think Netflix is going, whoa, 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 slow this horse down. Let us take control. Or maybe they're just even trying to get any idea she has off the ground. This is massively problematic for Meghan and reveals how devoid, I think, of any vision or idea for this brand Meghan is, because she's still talking in soliloquies. She's still not even telling us what As Ever is about. And I think Netflix is pulling teeth to get Meghan Markle to give them anything workable. So we are going to get into this new interview that Meghan put in Fast Company. I don't know what even magazine this is, but it's really shocking what Meghan reveals here and what we can glean. Because guys, I want to 100% guarantee you right now, things are an epic mess at As Ever. So we again are going to explore all this. But if you haven't been to Royal News Network before, hello, my name is Brittany. I provide compelling royal commentaries. So if you guys want to hit that subscribe button, I would love to have you back. And we're now delving into a little bit of a realm that I call the Crown Report, looking at what other royals are up to. And obviously, King Charles and Queen Camilla just opened Parliament over there in Canada. So let's listen to a little bit of his speech here.
The Crown has for so long been a symbol of unity for Canada. It also represents stability and continuity from the past to the present. As it should, it stands proudly as a symbol of Canada today in all her richness and dynamism.
Of course, this was a very historic event. His mother has opened Parliament a couple of times, but the last time was in the 1970s. So this was a very big deal. They had a huge, huge warm reception there in Ottawa, which is absolutely fantastic to see, because I know there are a lot of questions of what does the future hold for Charles as king, because he's not nearly as popular a figure as his mother or his son. So he's sort of a transitional king, I think, in many ways. I mean, he could live well into his 90s like his mother. I'm sort of doubting that, but this was a chance for him to definitely make connections in Canada, and it seemed to go very, very well for this very short trip. And we also have some, let's say, consternation in the student visa space, which may impact Princess Elizabeth of the Belgians. She is the Duchess of Brabant, and she has been doing her graduate studies at Harvard University. And apparently now there's going to be a lot of vetting processes going on for student visas. The entire program has been paused. And there's even additional evaluations for what some of the students have been doing online in terms of social media. This is done to address the issue that Trump sees of protests on campus. So we will see how this impacts Princess Elizabeth. And I do believe, because Princess Elizabeth is a future queen, and obviously you want to keep relations between countries good, I think diplomatically, Princess Elizabeth will get shooed in for her visa. The question is, though, does she take it if the rest...
Meghan Markle just shocked everyone. No products from her new brand As Ever until 2026?
Of the Belgian students who are interested in studying abroad don't. That is a fascinating question, and one we'll see maybe play out in the years to come. And because of all this, it's maybe... I mean, this might have always been the plan, but it's sort of interesting that Princess Ingrid Alexandra is actually going to Sydney, Australia for her studies. And this, you could say, is a change, because she should have perhaps gone to the United States. That's where her father went for some of his schooling. Also, Crown Princess Victoria went to Yale for a period of time. But since things are getting, you could say, contentious in the States, she decided to go to Australia instead. So interesting piece there when it comes to royalty and what that means. So we'll see how all of this plays out, but very fascinating updates on the Crown Report front. All right, into this article. And as I was reading through this, I even wrote a Substack for it. I actually started off with a different opinion. And then in the process of writing, I sort of came to a realization. And that's why sometimes, if I get the chance, if I force myself, I like to actually write out my thoughts ahead of time, because sometimes that helps me process the information and process the situation. I even find if I talk to friends and family after I filmed a video, I'm like, darn, I should have had that point. But all of that to say, this is a big problem. As ever, is in big trouble. You do not, by any stretch of the imagination, have a successful launch and then go, oh, you know what? We need to rethink everything. We'll get back to you in 6 months. No, that does not happen. So something has gone wrong. Something has gone wrong. Something is going terribly wrong to such an extent that needs a massive restructuring and basically re-envisioning the entire brand. Yes, those of you who are Meghan Markle Uber stans who got as ever tattooed on your arms, that seems like an incredibly stupid decision right now, because we might not even have the brand as ever in a year from now. Now, we don't know all the details about what exactly is going on behind the scenes, but I think this article is actually really revealing. And if Meghan had, let's say, paid more attention or something, she maybe wouldn't have said some of these things, because I'm looking at this going, if I was Netflix, I'd be going, oh my gosh. But I have a theory. Which I'll reveal at the end, that I think Meghan is no longer in charge of as ever, because she handled it so incredibly badly. So let's get into this. And I enjoy kind of analyzing these business things, because I do hope people maybe get something from it, become more aware of certain things, but also to just show how incredibly inept Meghan is. She sucks at this. I'm sorry, there's no other way to put it. She genuinely sucks at it. And you'll notice in this article, immediately what she does is talk about her kids. And the reason she does that is to deflect from how badly things are going. This is not a successful brand. This was not a successful launch. This was not a successful show or a podcast. Despite her great return in 2025, this has been a failure of a year so far for Meghan. And again, we'll get into why. She says how Meghan built her pioneering partnership with Netflix. As the first season of her podcast ends, Meghan Markle is looking to build on the success of As Ever, the brand she built with Netflix. So we have Netflix in here twice, and I'm going to guess, just my theory, that Netflix is the one really running the show anymore. So let's get down into it. So Meghan carries many titles these days. She's a podcaster, a philanthropist, a children's book author, the star of a Netflix show, and the founder of a direct-to-consumer startup. But when I sit down to speak with her, she's recently taken on a new role, that of Tooth Fairy. Because to me, I understand the personal bent, but to me, this seems like a deflection. Seems like a business magazine. Why are you talking about being the Tooth Fairy? And this takes up a good chunk of the beginning. And then we get into the struggles. And this is picking up on a thread Meghan left in Time magazine. She's 100% aware of this. She's really always thinking about these kind of things. And I don't think it actually works well for her. She says Archie recently lost his first tooth. Meghan rushed home to ensure she could be the one to leave a little money and a small dinosaur under his pillow. At 2 a.m., I have a big question of why Archie was waking up at 2 a.m. I mean, obviously kids wake up in the middle of the night quite a bit. But did she wake him up to show him the money and the dinosaur she was hiding under his pillow? Archie woke Meghan up excitedly to tell her what had happened. I had a lot of business meetings the next morning, but I still chose to cuddle with him for the rest of the night, she says. Those mom moments energize me to be a better founder, a better employer, a better boss. No, it doesn't. She's a terrible boss. Allegedly. We have heard endlessly that she's pretty much a bully as a boss. Again, allegedly. So she's not a better boss. She's not a better founder. She's not a better employer. An employer and a better boss are the same things. I don't know if she doesn't know that. If you're an employer, you're the boss. Just pointing that out. And it's all meant to sound nice. And she's always, I have so many business meetings. But what are you accomplishing? That's the big question, because she talks endlessly about going to meetings, but we don't really see the fruition of anything. And honestly, she could say, oh, I had so many meetings, but she could reschedule them, probably. She probably wakes up at later in the day. She can probably schedule her meetings to start at 11:30, go to 6 or 7 o'clock at night. She can do in many ways, whatever the heck she wants. So this idea that she was, I took time out of my night, I got less sleep so my son could tell me about the tooth fairy, is just complete hogwash. It's just utter and complete hogwash. And again, a deflection tactic from the disasters going on, because these business meetings are not to make the business better. It's to save it. So let's get into this bit here. These are the kind of work life details that Meghan likes to get into in her podcast series, Confessions of a Female Founder, which totally flopped. Made with the production company Lemonada Media, which is also behind the podcast by Sarah Silverman and David Duchovny, among others. It has more than 800,000 downloads since its April launch.
And Netflix crickets not a single as ever collab confirmed. Is this a quiet breakup or just a massive delay?
Now, granted, it only has 8 episodes. So because it only has 8 episodes, each episode only has 100,000 downloads. Oh my gosh. That's really bad. That's really bad. That's not impressive. That's not impressive. So I can get generally, I don't always hit this metric, but oftentimes I can get upwards of 100,000 views on a video. So let me look just at this month. Now, granted, again, I produce a heck of a lot more content, but in comparison, guys, I just do this all myself. So let's look at my views for May. 1.9 million views. Double Meghan. She had 8 weeks. Huge profile. I got more views. Let's see. Last 7 days. 513,000 views. So that's 3/5 or something. I'm terrible at math. Of what Meghan got, I got in a week. She had in days. That is not an impressive number by any stretch of the. If it was 8 million, maybe 800,000. And to be clear here, guys, overall, so she could have 250 downloads for the first episode, 100 downloads for the second, and then 50 for the third, 20 for the fourth. Like, it could go down that low. So that number means almost nothing. And I think an actual average would be better, although we might not be able to get that, but not great. Yeah, there we go. There we go. You missed it, but we had to interrupt this special broadcast because my dog, Pippa, needed to get into the room. Yes. So let's keep going. On the show, Meghan talks with female founders about the origins of their business along the lines of Guy Raz's How I Built This. I assume Guy Raz did it better. But the show also has another dimension, allows Meghan to give practical advice about launching her own lifestyle brand as ever. I'm pulling back the curtain to allow people to see the candid experience of being a founder. Now, I haven't listened to the podcast because, to be quite honest, I find Meghan Markle to be incredibly vapid, vain, and completely inept at business. So I have no desire to even see her attempt to find information, pulling back the curtain about being a founder, because I don't think she's listened to any of it. So there's nothing for me to get there, because obviously I've seen the results of Meghan Markle's efforts and they've been pretty dismal. So I don't think they're that good. In the 8-part series, she's spoken to guests ranging from Bumble's Whitney Wolfe Herd to Krish's Cassandra Thirstwell. The finale, released May 27th, features Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx and Sneaks. And let's double check, guys. I checked this morning. We'll even quit and then relaunch Apple Podcasts just to see, did this article at all result in any sort of increase in the profile of her show on Apple Podcasts? We're scanning, we're going down and down, and the answer is no. The answer is no. In all categories right now in business, she ranks 49. So guys, for recording this episode, I just updated it. It's sitting at number 42, which is only up 7 spots. Not very impressive at all. This thing, despite even this additional bit of publicity, is just not tracking in the slightest. When I looked at her episode, it was like 69 something. The episode has, though, Meghan Markle can breathe a sigh of relief. In the business subcategory of episodes, it has risen to the rank of 40. Again, showing that despite the publicity, despite the alleged interest and everything, her stuff is not tracking. It's just not. So what does this tell me? It was a massive failure and a flop. Nobody listened. Nobody cares. Even though this is actually a pretty good guess, nobody cares. In a conversation with Blakely, Meghan talks about how she partnered with Netflix to create, as ever, her new brand, which launched in February. I guess the name was announced. The products weren't officially launched until April, just saying. The line included products like tea, jams, honey, cookie mixes, and her iconic flower sprinkles, which are edible flower petals that spruce up dishes. I mean, groundbreaking stuff there, right? Right. Over the past few years, even as Netflix's subscriber numbers have continued to show impressive growth, it added 18.91 million subscribers, a year-over-year increase of 15.9%, which is very good, in the fourth quarter of 2024. It also has been exploring how it can create products tied to the content of shows. So this is actually smart. So again, I've talked about this before, but what Netflix is attempting to do, which is very smart, is diversify its revenue stream. Because at some point, they'll reach complete market saturation. There will be no subscribers or no more subscribers. Like, what if Netflix got every person on earth to sign up? There's nowhere to go. You have people who die off and then people who replace them. And maybe as the Earth's population dwindles, you don't have as much there. So yeah, there's sort of a limit to what Netflix can achieve by just having subscriptions. It's added a tier that has ads for the content, and they're going to have merchandise, marketing, all these sorts of things. It all makes sense from a business perspective. The streaming service now has an online shop that sells everything from cosplay costumes for Squid Game to Stranger Things bomber jackets. With Bridgerton, one of Netflix's biggest hits, the streaming service produced its own products like coffee mugs. It also licensed Bridgerton branding to other companies like Hill House and Selkie to produce dresses. So very smart, very smart. And it is smart of them to have merchandise for their shows. And here's where it gets sort of interesting and where Meghan, I think, is sort of deviating from the thing. And I want to make the argument here that Meghan probably doesn't own as much of her brand as you might think. She might own 49% and Netflix owns 51%. And as I was speaking with Dan Wooten, I'll put the conversation we had this week up above. But when I was talking to Dan, one of the things he pointed out, which was very smart, is that when it comes to building a brand, you want to keep and retain as much control as possible. It's only the people who really have no clue what they're doing and really want to give the running of a brand to somebody else who gives people more control. And I think that's sort of what's happening here. Because when you read through this and really think about what Meghan is saying, you realize, oh, this wasn't Meghan's idea. This was Netflix's idea. Because Netflix could not get anything out of her and her husband. And so they had to basically conjure something out of nothing and are still trying to sell and shill it. So here's what she says. Meghan says that she had been exploring various ways of launching a business when Bella Bajaria, Netflix content officer, approached her. Now Meghan has shared something else about this too. And this was during her Time 100 event. This is from the Daily Mail. When she began sending these items as gifts, so this was like jam and flower arrangements, Bella Bajaria, chief content officer of Netflix, suggested there's a show here, claims the 43-year-old actress turned entrepreneur. Meghan then revealed, I hadn't at the onset thought that was something I wanted to share in that way. With the final thrust of enthusiasm for her latest project, she added, creatively, we worked as partners to really find a way for it to land and for me to be able to share it and just have fun, which I think is really the goal of this chapter. What I think, though, when you really consider how bad the brand has been and how bad the show was, I think this was Bella Bajaria going, oh, dear Lord, can they please think of something? Can these two nincompoops do something? And this is what she came up with. She saw something Meghan was actually doing. And because Meghan, in my opinion, is pretty lazy, she was like, oh, there's a show there. You like doing this. Let's do basically the lowest hanging fruit. Now, that's smart in a lot of ways, but it's the lowest hanging fruit. It's the easiest thing in the world to get Meghan to do because she already does it. That's why Netflix chose it, because they want to have to push her to do more. She already sort of does this. So why not capitalize on what she already does? Because she can't do anything else.
What's really going on behind the scenes? This could be the biggest flop or the biggest setup in royal brand history.
I think that's the truth. And that's why Netflix came up with this. I think in many ways, this was all Netflix's idea because they can't get Meghan to do diddly squat. And if they have more control over this, they can force her to do more things. And I'll get to why I think maybe we can see this reflected and how terribly lackluster the As Ever content is. Meghan says, at the time I'd been working towards building out my own in-house team. Meghan says, but I had a complete U-turn because I completely bought into the vision she was sharing, which is where content and commerce meet. Not in a product placement way, but rather in an ideological way. Okay, number one, that means nothing. Like this product placement and the content meets commerce. And like, that's not the show you're shilling though. You can shill that, I think, on other shows and that might work. But the whole point of this show is to sell the freaking products. That's what you're selling. You're not selling really the brand, you're selling the products. So this sort of vision thing, I don't think really is going to work at the end of the day. But I want to bring your attention to this idea, the vision she was sharing. This is Bella's vision, not Meghan's. Meghan, yes, does some of this stuff. And yes, some of it she enjoys. But this is not really her. It's somebody else. Because again, I think the issue has always been Netflix could not get Harry and Meghan's rear ends in gear to create content. And so they had to do something incredibly simple to get Meghan to do anything remotely productive because she's not productive. She's not good at this. And she really struggled to get any of this together. She really did. And so Bella had to come in and get something together that she could get Meghan Markle to buy into. I would not be surprised if there were massive conversations at Netflix racking their brains trying to figure out how they can get this cosplay royal who claims she is a duchess who just wants to putter around her $15 million mansion, how they could get her to get a real job, basically, how they could get her to work. They couldn't get her to work. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. Take it for what you will. Goes on to say, in many ways, this is a pioneering partnership for Netflix. Along with Meghan, the Netflix team decided that it made sense for As Ever to exist on its own without any Netflix branding. A stupid mistake, by the way. That was not a good idea, which is maybe, again, why we're maybe getting some reformatting. This is why the line isn't called With Love Meghan like the show. The brand is in the same universe as the show, but they're not the same. Oh, dear Lord. So this would work. This could work. The problem is that you did not define what a single brand was. You can't have multiple competing brands if there's no overarching vision. Like this is branding marketing 101. This is like bare bones basic stuff. When it comes to me and this channel, I have Royal News Network. I actually have a LLC over everything. It's not named Royal News Network, but there's the LLC there. Royal News Network is a tentacle and it has multiple tentacles hanging off of it, like the Crown Report. And then we have Royal Fashion News that has like Tiara Tuesdays or Thursdays. And then we also have like the best and worst dress lists that are not specifically like branded, but kind of part of that whole brand identity. And then we have a future, at some point, there'll be a podcast, a royal history podcast or channel at some point. And I have a whole podcast series in mind at some point. So there will be more tentacles to this overall brand. When it comes to Royal News Network before, I started with Royal News Network. And the idea was to encompass everything about royals. That was the idea. But what I found as I was sort of working through things is that when it comes to having a news channel, you can't really create content in advance because things change day to day. In addition to that, when it comes to fashion, I could have a Fashion Friday segment set up. But if there's a big news story breaking Friday, then I need to push the fashion story back to capitalize on the news story. And that can be really disruptive. So instead, I was like, okay, I need to create a fashion channel. But I established the identity of this channel first and then moved on to the next chapter. Meghan didn't do that. I would argue she did it entirely backwards. She wanted to throw every branding up at front with no overarching vision except for the general idea of hospitality and maybe California. And it's not sticking. It's not really sticking at all. It's not making the impact that I think Netflix envisioned it to have. And so it's become a problem. She didn't have a vision here. You can't say, well, they're in the same universe if you haven't established what the universe is. You have to establish that first, then you can branch and play them off each other. But at the same time, it's also really stupid, in my opinion, because the whole point of the show should be to promote the products. Why else should the show exist unless it is to show the products? If you don't have those two things, it don't work. So it goes on to say, Meghan points out that Netflix is not just a financial backer. The company's consumer packaged goods teams worked closely with Meghan's team to manufacture the products. Okay, that reflects badly on Meghan and Netflix, guys, because the sticker was crooked, and I also found numerous grammatical errors and stuff in the packaging. So yeah, somebody dropped the ball somewhere. But again, I have an idea of maybe what was behind that a bit. Meghan also points out, we are on calls daily, working through product development, SKUs, and inventory. I hate how she keeps throwing out SKUs. Like, she's sounding clever. It's like, we're just looking at products. Like, she could just say product development. SKUs and inventory doesn't really make a ton of sense. And it really doesn't. Like, why are you talking about SKUs and inventory? Inventory and SKUs are kind of the same thing. Like, SKUs is literally is like the ID number. That's what a SKU is. Why are you talking about SKUs? It's inventory or products. Like, that would make more sense. Talking about SKUs. I used to work at Best Buy. A SKU was like a 6 or 7 digit number that identified the product. That's all it was. And so it's just like, I'm like, what are you doing? And she says, we have a field trip tomorrow to look at different manufacturers and suppliers as we expand the brand. So like, she's sort of teasing this, but I'm like, this seems awfully late for this type of thing to be happening. Should you not have figured this all out before you launched the brand? Wouldn't you think? So it says, As Ever's first collection was a runaway success. It really wasn't. Why do you think they're not announcing any new products until 2026? Because it was not a runaway success. Meghan says that even though the team spent a year preparing the line and forecasting demand, it did not. There's no way. There's zero way that is correct. I do not believe that for a second. I don't believe that for a second. If they had really done their market research, they would have created, number one, better products, number two, better branding, but also they would have figured out how much to order. Like, they deliberately made an excruciatingly small order to go, it's sold out. But I don't think there was that much there. And I wouldn't be surprised if sort of Netflix maybe found out about this a little later or something, and they found out how little was made, how fast it sold. Like, if you only had, like, say at the most 500 of the spread, because I think the spread she created the most of. So let's say she only had 500 of that. That's nothing. That's nothing. And I would not be surprised if it's even smaller. Let's say it was just 200. That it took 45 minutes to sell out means nothing. Like Kylie Cosmetics, I think. So just as a counterexample, Kylie's lip kits from Kylie Jenner, there was so much interest that the site completely crashed, which did not happen with Meghan.
Smash that subscribe button to stay on top of this royal roller coaster.